Moment to talk about the moment that we're in. And I'd just be really grateful to hear how you guys are thinking about this moment, 2025, 8 years after the publishing of The Donut.
Well, actually, often when I want to think about the moment we're in, I find the latest words of Indy Johar. So.
Okay, I'll play into that. I think we failed. And I think it's really important to look at that properly. I think we're in a moment when we are being forcibly re-entangled at a planetary scale. Forcibly re-entangled at a planetary scale. CO2, methane, all these gases, which were externalities in our system of single point optimization for goals, are forcing us to recognize our interdependence. And that's just one thing. I can name 100 other re-entanglements. The Amazon dies, we're all dead. If one of the great ice shelves in the Antarctic fail, pretty much most of the coastal cities are done, and it's destabilized, by the way. It is fundamentally destabilized. So on one hand, I think we're systemically re-entangling, and on the other hand, I think what we're in the middle of is an old idea of freedom in a world that's re-entangling. And I would argue what's happening is an old idea of freedom, which is feeling its future being re-entangled, is struggling against that. I can use the word America for that context. An industrial idea of freedom is challenged by the re-entanglement of the world. And I also think the question for us is, as we re-entangle, is what is our new thesis on freedom? In a moment when actually all of our lives are becoming more precarious, more vulnerable, more fragile, how do we unleash a new type of freedom which isn't rooted in the expansion of consumption and the expansion of consumer choice, but the expansion of being radically human? And I think that's a key thing. At the same time, I think for me, I think it's really important we systemically realize that we are now headed towards systemic war. We've already been at war, at the planet and other things, but this is now accelerating. And I don't want to be melodramatic, but you follow the numbers right now, they are all heading us that way. Climate breakdown is going to, and it's not climate change, it's climate breakdown, is going to massively increase price inflation. We're going to see geopolitics increase prices. Inflation is going to rise, inequality is going to rise. Competition for resources is going to rise in that context. And as we start to do that, we are going to massively increase inequality, because actually food, energy, water, all these things will become more and more precarious, driven by climate breakdown. And as we do that, we will threaten the social contract to which we live in. And I say all this not because I don't think we can do something about it, but I think we need to recognize the scale of what we need to do in order to do something about this. I no longer think we're living in a landscape rooted in net zero futures. I think we're living in a landscape rooted in a new thesis on how we generate security. And not security as a bounded idea of how do we make Sheffield secure or UK secure, because our future is entangled at the planetary scale. How do we build security that recognizes our metabolic interdependencies in the planetary scale, and critically, how do we do that in a different way? So this also means security not in a kinetic sense. I mean security of energy, food, water, critical minerals, information security, and a security that means that we can only thrive not with power over. Power over cannot deal with complexity. Care is the only thing, and care not as a service, care as a mutuality, is the only thing that operates in complexity, because you need to operate with a degree of unknowingness of the harm that you can do and the good that you can bring. So I suppose what I see is these levels. And the final point for me is I think this is also changes where we see value. We're in a moment when I think we're going to have to rebuild and reimagine our bioregions, our economy of our bioeconomy more fundamentally, our human economy, because our human economy is fundamentally an economy of slavery. It's an expansion of slavery. Labor is an expansion of slavery. It is not an inherent freedom of humanity. How do we build an economy not rooted in control, but rooted in learning and emancipation is a different type of economy. And this is not a moral argument for me anymore. In a complex, entangled world, you cannot organize through control, because control is too difficult to organize from central points to be able to instruct the world what to do. It is an information impossibility. And if it's an information impossibility, learning as a means of coordination and citizenship as a means of being fully present beyond the subject to state and beyond a consumer is a critical part of that reality. And I think we increasingly have the tools and the means to do that as well. I increasingly think we have the means to understand value. We have the means to understand the value of soil. We have the means to understand how critical it is. I think value and price are more visible. The disjunct between value and price is more visible. And I know I'm using economist language. This is probably kind of but I'm going to defer to Kate on a lot of this stuff. But for me, it's visceral. And I think this, I want to put the examples, two types of examples down. I use this example of the shirt. It's a £45 shirt. But if you were to genuinely price the extraction and the externalization of costs, this shirt is between 250 to 450 pounds. Your steak, if you eat it, shouldn't. But if you do, $5, it should be about $28 to $30 minimum. What that means is we have been living a consumer life based on the externalization and extractionism of our economy. At the same time, the tree planted outside, and Sheffield's great for trees, the tree planted outside is only understood through its cost, i.e. its insurance costs and its costs in terms of maintenance. And more problematically, it's optimized to reduce the maintenance costs, which is why 97% of trees planted are male trees, because they have lower maintenance, not usually males, but male trees. Unfortunately, male trees produce pollen, which is why we have the highest rates of asthma. So we've offset the efficiency of the environmental, management balance sheet into the health balance sheet. So we're doing it on both sides. But what's brilliant is that's visible. The risks are becoming visible. People are starting to recognize the systemic crisis. Now the challenge is we need a new generation of economists to start to code reality, as Kate has been doing, into this world. Because now reality is telling us your economy is fiction. Real economy is coming at you, whether you like it or not. And it will come at us through every sense. Soil, water, hydrological risk, everything you can imagine. And the final point I'd say is that the value of being human is massively diminished. The reason why you see homelessness everywhere, because we as a society are subject to an economy that no longer values being human. Capital has greater value than being human. That is what the economy is coded. And our society, unfortunately, is a subset of that economy because states govern through the subset of economic thinking. And that means we are actually devaluing, and not only devaluing, we are fundamentally destroying the value of being human. And that is disastrous, because that leads us to the idea that war is a permissible act because humans are no longer worth it. There is a long arc to where this leads us. And I point it out for real reasons, because the economy will guide us in a particular way to destruction here. Unless we have brilliant people like Kay opening up this conversation, and all of you here that are here to open up quite a different conversation about this. And this is no longer a moral conversation for me. It's an existential conversation of how we survive and thrive. That is it. And I'm happy to have any debate on this in real terms, because I think it is fundamental to our coexistence. And there is no pathway for the UK to survive if the Amazon goes. There is no divisible pathway. There is no New Zealand strategy for survival. New Zealand in COVID could not produce paracetamol, could not produce any form of antibiotics. As soon as we realize this interdependence, we start to live and act differently, and we recognize the pathway future is either forking between mutually assured destruction or mutually assured thriving. And it is entirely out of self-interest, no moral invitation.
So now you know why, when I want lucid words,